What's up everyone? I'm Dono, this is How to Happy. In this video I'm going to be talking about flow, the psychology of optimal experience. This book is best for those with an interest in cognitive psychology or philosophy. It's best for people trying to figure out flow and how to get into flow, what it means, and the best way to get into that experience more often. Flow is a little bit more difficult to digest just based on the philosophy pieces and kind of the use of vocabulary. However, most people should be able to get something out of it as it relates to flow states just by reading through it once. Moving on to the key insights. So as the title suggests, this book is all about flow states. And flow, as defined by the book, is basically an experience where you're fully ingrained in what you're doing and you know what you need to achieve, and the sense of self kind of disappears because all of your attention is on completing this task. Some people might call it getting in the zone. It's this experience most of us should be familiar with where you're just working on something so intently that you just kind of zone into it, and then before long a bunch of time has passed and you've just been working on whatever it is. Now the book mentions that for this definition of flow, you also need to be able to get instant feedback on what's going on. So for example, if you're trying to kick a ball into a goal, you'll instantly know whether or not the ball made it into the goal. That's part of the condition for being in a flow state for this book. It's interesting because a lot of people, upon self-reflection, say that some of their happiest moments were during states of flow. However, if you're in a state of flow and try to reflect on if you're happy or not, it'll instantly pull you out of that state so that you can reflect on what's happening. So it's really interesting that a lot of people mention that flow states are when they are happiest. However, we're not consciously aware of being happy. In fact, our awareness of ourself is actually gone when we're in a flow state. The book Flow also goes on to relate a bunch of different ways that we can get into flow. You can basically get into flow in a multitude of ways. So you can get into flow by doing mentally challenging tasks. You can do physically challenging tasks. You can get into flow when you're by yourself. You can get into flow when you're with others. Flow can be created through sensory experiences or just through pure thought experiments. Basically, the key components are doing something that you can fully focus your attention on, so much so that this sense of self kind of disappears. People tend to describe their flow experiences roughly the same, regardless of if it's, a thought experiment or working out or anything else that people experience flow. The book also argues that chaos is kind of the natural order of things, and while some people are more inclined to get into flow states, it is something that you can work towards and practice. You practice kind of structuring your thoughts or your actions and your focus so that you can get into flow faster and more often. Since these are some of our happiest times, being able to figure out how to get into flow more often can lead to more happiness. That's just a brief summary of some of the points in the book. There's definitely a lot more in there to unpack, which if you pick it up, I would definitely recommend so that you can really understand flow states and how they work. There are a couple more points in the book basically about how flow states relate to happiness and meaning. In essence, the argument in there is basically that you can pick whatever you want to apply meaning to and then get into a flow state and kind of work on that. All right, a few other considerations for me about this book. The first thing is you need to realize that while flow can be a really pleasurable state, it doesn't dictate whether or not you're doing something meaningful. So I can give you a personal example where I used to play a ton of video games, and the exact reason I would play them is because it was so easy for me to get into flow for extended periods of time. However, I wasn't getting the purpose component out of those states of flow. I would play for a long time, but then I wouldn't feel like I had accomplished anything. Now for someone else, they may play for a long time, see what they've accomplished, and feel really good about it. But personally, it just wasn't working for me in a way that I felt like I had achieved. So simply being in a flow state doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be happy reflecting on it later, because it may not align with the things that you want to accomplish. Another piece that I wanted to cover, and this is in the book as well, but basically it talks about setting challenges right on the edge of your skill level so that you can increase and improve, and that's how you get into an optimal flow state. So you want to pay attention to what kind of things you're doing to get into flow. So for example, just watching TV could put you in a flow state, but it's a very low challenge flow state. So you might want to look for ways to increase the challenge because that's more likely to increase your happiness. For example, if you want to watch TV, maybe instead of just watching TV, you kind of look for some higher level elements, right? You try to digest the character development, or you try to digest how the writers came up with the plot, these more involved type of things. Instead of this really simple flow state, you can build a more complex flow state on top of it and still do the same activity. Now, you don't have to do this, but based on what's in the book, it's basically saying that increased happiness comes from the ability to increase your challenges while in a flow state. So I figured it'd be relevant to bring up. One last point is work, or basically any task, can be turned into a flow state with the right mindset. Couple quick examples. Let's say that you are folding laundry, right? That's a pretty mundane task. But you can add elements to it to make it more of a flow state and get instant feedback and focus on improving. So if it's folding laundry, you could say, it usually takes me 5 minutes to fold all my laundry. Let's see if I can do it in 4.5 minutes. Just by adding this extra component, you can turn it into a challenge that requires your full attention. Another example, maybe your job is feeling a little bit stale. Maybe you could try focusing on eliminating filler words and count up the number of filler words that you use in a day and then slowly try to reduce that. These are all things that can pull your attention towards a goal and help get rid of some of the sense of self that can potentially keep us up in our heads. Now let's move on to the exercise section. Take some time to determine what activities you currently participate in, which allow you to reach flow. What's the easiest way for you to enter these states? Physically, mentally, some other combination? Are the flow states in your lives leading to happiness or simply passing time? When you reflect on these activities, do you feel they're worthwhile? How can you achieve more moments of complete concentration that lead into flow? What new skills might you want to take on that could induce a flow state? How can you add more flow to necessary tasks that you don't particularly like? I know that's quite a few questions, but they are ones that can help you understand flow and how flow fits into your life a little bit better, especially since there's such a strong argument in the book that flow can lead to greater happiness. I would say that it's worth checking out and reflecting on. That's all I've got for this video. As always, if you have any questions, comments, topics you want me to cover, put them down in the box below. There will also be a link to this book below. And that's it. See you next time.
You can check out more content at howtohappy.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you can stay up to date on the videos. We've also got a Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook that you can check out. Reflect, take action, and enjoy life. See you next time.